or if he's not bringing a new religion, he's their prophet, their master. And we don't have any evidence from the Bible anywhere that birthday of any Jewish prophets was ever held, nor that of Christ. Now coming to Hadrat Muhammad Rasul Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, those who were with him, who were trained by him, who knew him better than any following generation, and they loved him much more than anybody else of the later generations, they never celebrated his birthday either. It was not only Rasul Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself not doing it, but the Khulafa, all the four caliphs, and all the generations of the companions, and the later generation which is called Tabi'in, and still later generation which are called Taba Tabi'in, and all this, yes. None did it. So who is better in birth? You know? Yes. So it is a negative, it has a negative element in it, as if you are more worthy of this. So that is why my late father, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani, was very averse to this. You know, he was religiously against it. Nobody would dream in his days to celebrate birthday parties, and you know, whenever, if anybody did, whenever it came to his notice, he was very angry. But didn't take any disciplinary action against him or her, because I have told you, it is not a part of the Sharia.
No.
We infer from these things which I have just told you that we should discourage it, and we always discourage it, right? But this tendency of holding birthday parties, by it I refer to that, right?
Can I ask a question?
Please, please.
Would it be acceptable on that, to say 2 rikats or say extra prayers for someone on a particular day, rather than to pursue any other activity?
I think on a particular day is the central point to your question, perhaps. Because first to say 2 rakats of nawafil or this option prayer should not be in any way against the traditions of the Holy Prophet, because he has been saying as many as possible, and nawafil are a part of the injunctions of the Holy Quran. So to pray for someone specially and say 2 rakat of nawafil is it is in the spirit of Islam, and lies within the instructions of Hadrat Muhammad Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But now the difficult part comes of choosing one particular day. So before I answer this, I should like to inquire about what sort of day you have in mind.
Well, I'm wondering, I appreciate what you've just said.
Yes.
I'm wondering if it would be acceptable if those 2 rakats were said, if people were used to celebrating birthdays. One way of breaking people of this habit would be maybe to suggest something better by offering these 2
oh yes, of course there is no harm. I don't see any harm. I think it's a very wonderful suggestion. It's a very useful suggestion to tell them to spend their time in a better way. So you are suggesting that if, for instance, we tell people, instead of holding meaningless birthday parties, to tell the boy or the girl who is born on that day to have special nawafil, and for the family members also to celebrate in this sense, to pray specially for that person who is born on that day by praying to Allah more than in ordinary days. I don't see any harm in that at all. I think it's quite useful, quite a wise suggestion. Right, thank you.
So I have a question by Tahir Ahmad of East London tonight.
Right.
His question is, other ethnic or religious communities have opened schools in the UK why does not the Ahmadiyya Jamaat open such schools as well?
We have gone into the question, and we have explored all the various angles concerning the feasibility of such a project. When I came here in the beginning, the very first year I arrived here, we got Islamabad with the grace of Allah. It was a gift of Allah, and the first thing which struck us was, why not use it, convert it into an Ahmadiyya school. So we appointed a committee, not only here but also counterpart committees in Europe and America, etc., to go into the matter and find out how many parents would be ready and willing to send their daughters or boys to such a school. And the expenses which were estimated were quite high, because in Britain you have to follow the British norm of schools, how they are run, and the minimum requirements have to be fulfilled. So it was quite an expensive project. And the answer which we received was, the answers which we received were that the number of boys or girls we could draw would not be sufficient to meet the cost and expenses. And the lower the number goes, the higher the costs rise. And secondly, we did not have here extra staff enough to manage all these things. Because when I came here, after some negotiations and some convincings on our part, the British government was kind enough to ultimately permit me a certain number, a small number, of assistants to be brought from Pakistan. And they were ready to give them, visas for limited period to begin with. Now, that number was not sufficient to meet the day-to-day business which normally is carried out by any Khalifa. For instance, when I came from Pakistan, the staff in the private secretary office alone and the relevant people around, maintenance people, etc., were around 100. And the staff which I brought with me was a temporary staff only two, Hamid Rasulullah Khan and who was the next, Brigadier Bakri Zaman. And when they left, then a small trickle of experts started coming in to help me, and we still, with the grace of Allah, managed to do this work with the help of all voluntary workers. If there were no voluntary workers available here, it would be impossible for me to do justice to my responsibilities. So in view of this, the shortage of people, trained people, who would be spared the whole time for managing these schools, etc., was one of the main hurdles. But still we have not forgotten it. The idea keeps coming to me, maybe today, maybe now, we are in a better position to run a school. So inshallah, if the time comes, we'll see to it, because it's very important.
I suppose it depends really on the numbers, because the only practical way of doing it, because the Jamaat is spread out throughout the country, would be to have boarding schools, but then that would be breaking up the family units.
This was one of the main hurdles. Yes, you have just reminded me. Yes, exactly. To begin with, I was a bit hesitant in accepting these suggestions, although I wanted it myself, because I believed that in a community which is small in number comparatively with the society in which it is residing or living, it is not practically possible to draw students from all over the country, breaking the family units and inviting so many problems yourself. Apparently it was not feasible. And the schools draw the pupils from around them. This is a natural phenomenon. The closer the school is, the easier and more comfortable it is for the family to send their children to such schools. So people who buy a house close to the school, they always write to me, Alhamdulillah, thank God, We've got a house close to a school. Now what